Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. Conservatives are pressing the Liberals as to how soon a COVID-19 vaccine will be available. The Christmas Kettle campaign has begun, and the Salvation Army has a unique partner in Lethbridge in helping to provide for the most needy. And a wildfire near Reno, Nevada has scorched a number of homes while threatening hundreds of others.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. Conservative health critic Michelle Rempel-Garner is pressing the federal government on how an eventual COVID-19 vaccine will be given out and who's going to get it first. Health Minister Patty Hajdu says the government is working on it with the provinces and local authorities.
Mr. Speaker, we're 10 months into the COVID crisis and news of potential vaccines are starting to surface. But for months, immunologists, pharmacists, and public health officials have been asking the federal government to table a transparent plan on where Canada is on the list to receive a vaccine, how the vaccine will be delivered to Canadians, and who will get it first. On what date will the Prime Minister make public this plan, or does he even have one?
Scientists have been working around the world on their important work to uncover effective vaccines for COVID-19. We've been working to make sure that Canadians will have access and be able to get vaccinated when the time comes. That's why we've secured a range of vaccines, Mr. Speaker, and hundreds of millions of doses for Canadians so that Canadians are safe and well served when they arrive. A few vaccine candidates have published some promising results and seem to be moving quickly. This is the light at the end of the tunnel. I know that we need to continue to work closely together to get through the next several months, but we will continue to work with all of our partners to ensure that Canadians have access to vaccines when they arrive.
Across Canada, there have been 311,000 cases of COVID-19, but fortunately, 248,000 people have recovered from the virus. There have also been over 11,000 deaths attributed to the novel coronavirus. In Alberta, there have been 443 deaths. We've also gone over the 10,000 mark when it comes to active cases at 10,057. The Calgary zone leads the way with 4,201 active cases. The Edmonton zone is next with 4,157. The Central zone has 1,151, and here in the South zone, we now have 532 active cases of COVID-19. Dr. Dina Hinshaw says over the past 24 hours, there have been 732 new cases of the virus. There are 287 people in hospital, and of those, 57 are currently in the ICU. Hinshaw says hospitals are seeing a new influx of COVID-19 patients, which may mean surgeries may be cancelled.
AHS is able to increase the amount of hospital spaces available to patients with COVID if they reduce the number of other patients in hospital. This means reducing the amount of scheduled or elective surgeries and other procedures that might require overnight stays in hospital and reducing the number of ambulatory clinic visits. AHS also has contingency plans in place to ensure beds are available if needed to provide care for patients with COVID-19.
BC Premier John Horgan wants Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to work with the provinces on a plan to limit travel in Canada to fight the spread of COVID-19. Horgan wants Trudeau to deliver a message that travel throughout Canada should be for essential purposes only.
When it comes to travel, non-essential travel is prohibited in British Columbia, and it will remain that way for the next 2 weeks at least. I'm going to reach out to the Prime Minister. We have been working collaboratively for months now. I think the last conference call, the Prime Minister said it was the 27th meeting that premiers and the federal government have had over the past 10 months, which of course is unprecedented. But I want to say today that we need a pan-Canadian approach to travel. We need to make sure that people in Coquitlam are living under the same rules as people in Chicoutimi. We need to make sure that those who want to come to British Columbia must only do so if it is essential for their business or their well-being.
Manitoba's Chief Public Health Officer is looking into further public restrictions as coronavirus numbers remain high there. Dr. Brent Roussin says he's looking at reducing the number of stores that can remain open and at cutting the 5-person limit on gatherings, even with Black Friday coming up.
We're in code red in Winnipeg right now. We have people dying every day. We have our healthcare workers telling us that our hospitals are reaching their limits. This isn't the time for having a large in-person sale for non-essential goods or services. Okay? There's lots of things that can be curbside pickup online, right? But we can't have busy businesses for non-essential reasons right now.
Ontario Premier Doug Ford says he will announce new restrictions for COVID-19 hotspots on Friday. Ford says case counts in Toronto, Peel, and the York region are concerning, and he will take targeted action.
We continue seeing extremely troubling numbers in Peel, Toronto, and York region. And the virus is spreading at an alarming rate in these areas. And I can't stress this enough. The situation is extremely serious. Right now, we're staring down the barrel of another lockdown in these regions. Last week, I asked the Chief Medical Officer of Health to come back with his recommendations on what we need to do to flatten the curve on the second wave. We expect new measures to be discussed at Cabinet and announced in the coming days.
As of today, Nunavut is shutting down for 2 weeks to try and get cases of COVID-19 under control there. All schools and non-essential businesses are closed, as are libraries, fitness centers, and government offices. Health centers are also closed except for emergencies, and the hospital in Iqaluit is not accepting walk-ins.
There are 8 new cases today in Alberta and 2 new cases in Rankin Inlet. The total number of persons followed to date is 4,141, and 785 persons are still being followed. Sadly, the spread of COVID-19 is normal. Transmission will happen. Our rise in cases over the past few days is significant and seems scary.
Gatherings in Nunavut are restricted now to 5 people and are not allowed in homes. About a month ago, the town of Coaldale said no to a mandatory mask bylaw after the community disagreed that it needed one. The town said they wanted to instead focus on education opposed to enforcement. Video journalist Ainsley O'Reilly visited Coaldale today to see how the town is working through the pandemic weeks after the face-covering bylaw was shot down.
When it comes to wearing a mask, there's a variety of different viewpoints. Bylaw, no bylaw, wear it in a business, don't wear it at all. I came to Coaldale on Tuesday and interviewed various business owners who are all seeing different things.
I'm not a believer myself, like in wearing mask. Like, I mean, I think the proper distance.
I'd say we probably got a good 60-70% of people coming in wearing them. We have a fair amount of people that still do wear them, even though they aren't enforced here.
And people are just really behaving. I don't see where people are revolting or protesting wearing or not wearing a mask.
Because Lethbridge has a mandatory mask bylaw and Coaldale doesn't, some businesses say they are seeing more traffic.
I've had a number of people who have come in not wearing masks, saying that they're coming in from Lethbridge because Coaldale doesn't have a mask bylaw. It's weird because it's bringing us more business, but it's also hard because it's something that lots of people are trying to keep up to date.
In a number of off-camera conversations, some business owners shared that they refuse to wear a mask and boycott businesses that require them, while other businesses enforce mask wearing upon entrance. Town officials say that no matter your stance, if you're making a trip to Coaldale from Lethbridge, be respectful of safety protocols.
Coaldale certainly is a welcoming community, and we, even though others may use Coaldale as the place to do their shopping because they don't have to wear a mask by law, just only means that we would hope that they would certainly respect the process and the protocols that are in place, even for Coaldale.
For Bridge City News, I'm Ainsley O'Reilly.
Stars Air ambulance crews are transporting more COVID-19 patients as cases continue to rise across the prairies. Officials with the life-saving service say missions involving COVID patients has gone up from 13 to 19%. Prior to the pandemic, around 7% of STAR's overall missions were for patients with influenza-like illnesses. STARS serves patients in Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba. The bases in Alberta are located in both Calgary and Edmonton. Now, this next story may warm your heart just a little bit. A Lethbridge Community Resources Unit Sergeant's Office has a World Kindness Day banner on the wall, and it was made specially by local students.
Pretty good surprise. Yesterday I got a phone call from Lori McIntosh. She's one of the kindergarten teachers at St. Martha's School. I was a school resource officer for that school, so she reached out to me and said, hey, we have something to give you. So I went to the school, didn't know what to expect, went inside, and sure enough, there's a big banner on their wall. The students were just expressing their gratitude for the police and for their school resource officer. It was just a really nice, unexpected event that took place. Within the police service, we do have a unit called the Community Engagement Unit, and within that there's a lot of different officers that work there. We have our school resource officers that are responsible for working within the schools and helping the students, basically just being that resource for them, not just for the students but also for the staff.
There's a new sheriff in town for Medicine Hat. The city has a new police chief. Mike Warden, who is originally from the Hat, spent the last 25 years with the Calgary Police Service. Warden, who is currently working as a superintendent covering Calgary's Southwest District, which has 500 officers, will start his new job at Medicine Hat on January the 4th.
Really what my plans are to go down and engage the membership and engage the community. So I really want to listen to them and find out what's working, what's not, both with the community and both with the membership, because why change things that are working, right? There's always room for improvement. I think that's always opportunities there. So I'll be looking for those. And if there's things that we're doing well, and we'll just continue to do those. And if there's things that we can do even better, then that'll be my role, is to do that. So I'm an outsider coming in, so I know a few of them, but I don't know many. So I really have to build some trust with them. I'm sure they are, concerned that I'm going to come down and try to change a bunch of different things. And the approach I'm going to take is listen.
The hiring ended a 6-month committee process to replace retiring Medicine Hat Police Chief Andy McGrogan. The Alberta Motor Association is encouraging everyone to help out local food banks this year with a fun social media challenge. As video journalist Mike Quinn explains, this new initiative will help provide for so many needy families in our region.
The Stack to Sack Hunger Food Drive will run from November 16th to December 16th in support of the Fill Our Fleet campaign that will help out food banks across Alberta.
So our target this year is $100,000 in donations to the food banks. We reached out to our food bank partners around the province. And Lethbridge reported seeing nearly double the numbers of single adults who are relying on emergency food services.
There is an engaging new social media challenge for community members to get involved, and donations will be accepted at AMA centers in Alberta.
So what we're encouraging folks to do is to go into the pantry, find some of those spares if they have any, and to have a little fun with it. Since many of us are working at home, we're encouraging people to stack food up and get the pile as high as you possibly can, take a photograph of it, take a video of it, post it on social media, Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram with that hashtag #StackToSackHunger.
At the Lethbridge Food Bank, the nonprofit is preparing for their Christmas hampers.
And so those non-perishable food items, usually the ones that are, the canned meat, the canned beans, those are some items that we are always in need of. Cereal, and of course we're always looking for the protein option, turkey, ham, chicken, and the extra Christmas goodies that you would want on in your house and for your family.
There's a changing demographic for clients at the Interfaith Food Bank, and they're looking for non-perishable food items that cost just a little more.
Like peanut butter, cereal, baby food, canned meats and fruits. And of course, financial gifts go a lot further than going out and purchasing food itself. So if people want to maximize their donation, they're certainly welcome to donate online.
To donate directly to the Lethbridge Food Bank or the Interfaith Food Bank, you can go online to fillourfleet.ca. For Bridge City News, I'm Mike Quinn.
The Salvation Army Lethbridge is calling on the community for its support amid a spike in demand for its Christmas assistance programs. From the Christmas Kettle campaign to the toy drive, the Salvation Army is saving Christmas for local families in need. Loris Alexander has the details.
We run the gamut, really, of help. And in so much as what it's possible with resource-based, et cetera, we try to do our very best. So the Kettle campaign, every year, it's a very short period of time where we really ask and really need people to step up and help us to help others. There's no other way of saying it.
The Salvation Army has also always had a Christmas toy drive, spreading Christmas cheer to little ones.
People, would come to us with needs, and I mean, who can turn away a crying mom, right, or a hurting dad, someone who's either through health-related issues or work or employment issues. Who can turn folk like that away?
There is a particular need for toys for infants and teenagers.
From newborn to about 3-4 years old, we seem to be a little bit low on those toys. And of course for teens, We know that buying for teens is really difficult because, teens want expensive things. We, of course, can't afford to do that. But, stocking, stuffer type items, smaller, lower ticket price items, anything that would be relative to what a teen would like.
Bladen says the Salvation Army's work is a response to God's love.
We want to be a part of meaningful community, but beyond that, we do it because that's what God would have us do. We simply model ourselves after the Lord Jesus Christ. That's all it really comes down to. It's really quite simple, and we don't need to make it complicated. If you just do as God would have you do through the example of Jesus Christ and the presence of His Holy Spirit within us, it's really quite simple.
For Bridge City News, I'm Loris Alexander.
It appears as though more and more people are getting into the Christmas spirit a little bit earlier this season. Many believe it's a result of COVID-19 and the spirits need to be lifted up. And Christmas generally is a good time to do that. Interior decorators and Christmas enthusiasts discuss why so many are decorating early for the holidays.
We were looking to start the holiday cheer early. And, as crazy as it sounds, those little things that you do totally make an impact on your mood, how happy you are, what you have to look forward to. So our tree has been up since the 1st of November. And slowly but surely, we've just added more and more each day. My kids get involved. They get super excited to get involved. And now we're counting down the days until Christmas.
For people asking us to come put their Christmas lights back up in April. And so we were like, that's indicative of something. And we knew that it was a kind of an emotional response. I think people were looking for hope. People were looking for something to feel good about. And they were cooped up in their houses.
That definitely seems to be the trend. Basically, once Halloween was over is when I started being contacted by followers on Instagram or by previous clients like, hey, where should I put my tree? What do you think I should do over my fireplace? And it's just been full on holiday season since then.
I'm so looking forward to putting up my Christmas tree once again. Now, when it comes to Christmas, governments are warning us not to have lots of friends and family over during the pandemic. Political reporter Brian Lilly has spoken to many MPs, and he says the message is not to cancel Christmas, but just modify it a little bit when it comes to getting together with those we love, and not to forget that Jesus is the reason for the season.
Christmas is not about parties. It is not even the holiest day of the year. That would be Easter. Ask any Christian, Christmas is very special, but without the resurrection, the birth of Jesus doesn't mean a whole lot. So we made it through Easter in the middle of a lockdown. We can make it through Christmas when we're not in a lockdown. But if you need to have 50 people in your house to have Christmas, you're probably not celebrating it right.
Mr. Lilly will also discuss how he says Prime Minister Justin Trudeau may be using the pandemic to reset Canada. He will have more details on that coming up after business news. Federal Conservative leader Erin O'Toole says Canada needs to take a tougher stand against China. That includes denying telecom giant Huawei from becoming part of our country's 5G network.
It will call upon the government to develop a comprehensive plan aimed at protecting Canada from the growing influence of Chinese influence operations. The democratic world must acknowledge that the approach to China over the last 2 decades has not worked. In fact, the situation has only gotten worse in recent years. Everything carried out by the Chinese Communist Party is deliberate and planned, from their lobbying campaign of Western politicians to secure that WTO admission, to their efforts at disrupting our industries by dumping state-subsidized cheap commodities and ignoring intellectual property laws.
Firefighters and homeowners are battling a wildfire in Nevada. The blaze, located southwest of Reno, has destroyed many homes as high winds have been causing the fire to spread. Reno Fire Chief David Cochran says as many as 500 homes were threatened as the blaze grew to 600 hectares, or around 1,500 acres, within 3 hours of when it first broke out. There were no reports of any injuries. Authorities have cut power off to around 7,000 customers as a precaution, and several roads have been closed. Senate Democrats are pushing for a generous COVID relief package while also slamming U.S. President Donald Trump for throwing up obstacles during the presidential transition.
The country wants us to come together and get something done to deal with this COVID crisis. But Senate Republicans have continued denying the election results, and they are holding America back. It's outrageous that the Trump administration has refused to provide the president-elect with high-level intelligence briefings or brief the transition on the vaccine distribution plan.
Well, thanks to Chinook winds, the meltdown has continued across much of southwestern Alberta. Will the warmer temperatures continue, though? We'll have complete weather details coming up in just a moment. It is great to see so much of the snow melting around our region as above seasonal temperatures continue here. Now, Jeanette Rocher is here with a look at the weather forecast. Jeanette, we shouldn't get too confident. Is there a chance of flurries tonight?
Yeah, that's right. We could actually see a 30% chance of flurries beginning late this evening after midnight, but they should clear up by the morning. Overnight low, by the way, -4. Into tomorrow, partly cloudy skies for mainly the rest of the day on Thursday. -2 our high tomorrow. Into Friday and Saturday, lots of sunshine, high of 5 degrees. 7 degrees is our high for Sunday, and 4 for Monday with a mix of sun and cloud, partly cloudy skies. Also expected next Tuesday with a high of 9 degrees. So we're seeing our temperatures rising and falling all over the place, and the almanac tells us that the average high should be right in here, 3 degrees, so we're not doing so bad after all. Average low these days should be about -8. 17 was our high temperature in 1949, and our chilliest day on record was right here, -26 in 1994. Sun rose this morning at 7:49 a.m. and giving us just a little under 9 hours of daylight today. Sunset this evening, 4:45 p.m. So definitely in that 4 o'clock hour. Chance of rain looking at the west coast tomorrow for both Victoria and Vancouver. Periods of rain, highs of 8 and 9 degrees in those cities. Over in Edmonton, we could see an overnight snowfall, and into tomorrow, -11 the high there. Calgary, -9. They could see some flurries this evening tomorrow. Those are going to clear up though, giving them a mix of sun and cloud for the rest of the day tomorrow. Periods of snow expected tomorrow in Saskatoon. High of -5, -3 in Regina, -2 expected to be the high in Winnipeg. All three of those cities should be seeing periods of light snow tomorrow as well. Now in Toronto, tomorrow we're looking at a high of 12 degrees with a mix of sun and cloud. Ottawa, high of 8, a high of 6 degrees in Montreal. All of those cities should see partly cloudy skies and some gusty winds as well. Now as we will move further east into the Maritimes, looking at Fredericton, high of -1 with a mix of sun and cloud. 1 degree the high in Halifax, -1 here as well in Charlottetown, and a 40% chance of flurries expected tomorrow in St. John's, Newfoundland with a high of -1. So there you go, that is your forecast.
Kraft Heinz announced that it will be making ketchup in Canada once again. Company officials say they will begin producing Heinz ketchup at its facility just outside of Montreal, pumping out the equivalent of 13 million 1-liter bottles each year beginning in 2021. Heinz created some controversy 6 years ago when it left Ontario and pushed some shoppers to lash out and switch brands. The Quebec government announced that it will loan $2 million of the total $17.6 million US cost to add a ketchup production line at the Kraft Heinz factory in Mount Royal, Quebec. The new line is expected to create around 30 jobs. Canada's annual inflation rate increased 0.7% last month. Now, that is well above the 0.4% economists were expecting. Stats Canada says that was up from 0.5% in September and was the biggest year-over-year increases in prices since June. The federal agency says the increase was almost entirely driven by higher food prices, particularly those for lettuce and fresh or frozen chicken. New home prices also increased at their fastest pace in 14 years as lower mortgage rates coincided with increased demand for single-family homes. The group representing Canadian drilling contractors is forecasting a rebound in oil and gas well drilling next year from historic lows this year. The Canadian Association of Oil Well Drilling Contractors says it expects more than 3,700 wells will be drilled in 2021. That is up 14% from this year. The forecast is more optimistic than the one made almost a month ago by the Petroleum Services Association of Canada, which predicted an 8.8% drop next year. The two organizations use different methods to count wells. Canada's Transport Minister Marc Garneau says our country will not immediately follow the United States in lifting its flight ban on Boeing 737 MAX jets. The U.S. government cleared the jets to return to the skies today, nearly 2 years after regulators around the world grounded them following a pair of crashes which claimed 346 lives. Garneau says Canada will impose different requirements than the United States, including procedures on the flight deck and differences in flight operator training. He says Transport Canada's validation process will conclude very soon. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was down 58 points on the day to finish at 16,889. The Dow was down 344 points to 29,438. The S&P 500 was down 41 points to 3567, and the Nasdaq was down 97 on the day to finish at 11,801. West Texas Intermediate oil was up 39 cents to 41.82 US per barrel. Natural gas was up 2 cents to 271 US. Gold was up 8 cents to 1872.32 US an ounce, and silver was even on the day at 24.33 US an ounce. Wheat is at $267 per metric ton. Barley's also at $267. Canola's at $570, and corn is at $284 per metric ton. Live cattle were up 68 cents to 110.65. Feeder cattle were down 243 to 137.30, and lean hogs were up 28 cents to 65.80. The Canadian dollar was up slightly over the past 24 hours to 76.43 US. Recapping one of our top stories this hour, STARS Air ambulance crews are transporting more COVID-19 patients as cases continue to rise across the prairies. Officials with the life-saving service say missions involving COVID patients has gone up from 13 to 19%. Prior to the pandemic, around 7% of STARS overall missions were for patients with influenza-like illnesses. STARS serves patients in Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba. There is talk that the federal government may take on the pandemic response to COVID-19. Now, is that a good idea instead of the provinces? Political journalist Brian Lilly will break down what that may look like in just a moment. But first, here's a look what's happening in and around your community.
Here's your Bridge City News community calendar. Lethbridge's Sport Council's Outdoor Roving Gyms program is taking place Mondays from 9:30 to 11 a.m. at the Service Sports Center and from 6 to 7:30 p.m. at Emmanuel Lutheran Church. This free program is for kids ages 5 and under and their caregivers. Come and enjoy a great time of fun and get active. For details and to register, visit lethbridgesportcouncil.ca/rovinggyms. The Ho Ho Holiday 5K is the most festive fun run in Canada, combining the magic of the holiday season with community engagement and fitness. This fun run helps raise funds to support Make-A-Wish Canada. Each registration includes a Santa suit, finisher's medal, a holiday treat, and timing app. Beginning November 25th until December 31st, you can join thousands of Santas virtually across Canada, spreading Christmas cheer and helping support Make-A-Wish Canada. For more information, visit hohoholiday5k.com. Get out and explore nature. The Helen Schuler Nature Center is offering guided 1-hour field trips for all ages. Visit lethbridge.ca/things to do. Click on Nature Center and follow the events page, where you'll find a list of featured tours that will introduce you to amazing plants and animals found right here in Lethbridge. Cost is $35. Book online for your tour today. And that's your Bridge City News community calendar.
COVID-19 cases continue to rise in many areas across the country. Provincial governments are taking increased measures to limit the spread of the virus, but there's talk that perhaps the federal government may take over the pandemic response. To talk about this in more detail is one of our regular contributors, Brian Lilly of the Toronto Sun. Now, Brian, not every province is the same. Isn't a patchwork approach, as Alberta Premier Jason Kenney referred to, maybe a little more practical?
Well, it absolutely is. And despite the fact that there are a lot of media calls for this and a lot of people who are allied with the Prime Minister calling for this, thankfully, he's not. And, you know, I can point to a lot of reasons why there shouldn't be. The patchwork approach, obviously, is something that even the Prime Minister referenced. You know, he said it depends on what part of the country you're in terms of how we're responding to COVID-19. And I can point to your province in Alberta, where at different points in time, Calgary and Edmonton, which have been the hot spots. I know you've had some problems in Brooks. I know you've had some problems elsewhere, and those have been treated differently than areas where there is little to no COVID-19. Well, consider the vastness of Canada. Then you consider the fact that the federal government has absolutely no capacity to run a healthcare system in any single province, never mind 10 provinces and 3 territories. They're just simply not able to do it. They also don't have the ability to step in and start managing the school systems. The school systems are they're an integral part to how we manage COVID-19. So are workplaces, which requires the Provincial Ministry of Labor to step in and do inspections. Are you following the rules at your workplace, be it a meatpacking plant or a transportation unit or a school or any type of industrial establishment, the construction site across the street from you? Are they following the rules? The federal government is not equipped to do this. But I could also point to how the fact that whether it's getting rid of the national emergency strategic stockpile, getting rid of the global public health intelligence network, the fact that they didn't deal with the border quickly enough, the federal government has not dealt with their part of COVID-19 very well. So for them to step in and say, we're going to take over, would be the height of hubris. Again, I want to say, thankfully, the Prime Minister, even in his news conference on Tuesday, said, this is not something that we're looking at doing. We're not looking at bringing in the Emergency Measures Act. But a lot of his allies are still saying, this is the only way that we will beat this in Canada.
There were two announcements over the past couple of weeks of new COVID-19 vaccines coming our way, Brian. One from Pfizer and now another from Moderna. Public health officials say, however, that the delivery of the vaccine is still a number of months away. Why the delay?
Well, because they're not through clinical trials yet. And quite frankly, both companies announced their results for their vaccine trials, not through a peer-reviewed journal, which is a normal way of dealing with such things in the medical community, but through a press release. So yes, these results look promising, but they have not been vetted by anybody. They have not been vetted by Public Health Agency of Canada. They have not been vetted by the FDA in the United States. They have not been vetted by their peers who could look and say, all right, did Pfizer or Moderna meet the standard of how you need to test these things? That hasn't happened yet. So if that happens, and let's hope that it does, okay, I want to be very clear. I want these vaccines to work. I want them to be available quickly. But even if they do, it will be months and months away. The Pfizer vaccine in particular is problematic. Both vaccines require 2 shots, weeks apart. But the Pfizer vaccine, you require deep freeze. Not just the idea that it's got to be kept in a freezer like any of us might have in our homes. No, we're talking minus 75. So, almost what you put Walt Disney or Han Solo in to freeze them to come back to life later on. These are not readily available. The federal government has started to try and procure such devices, and they're also looking at bringing in the military to help distribute them. Now, for people that are starting to freak out, this is not about the military trying to round you up and shove a needle in your arm. The military is good at one thing. Well, they're good at many things, but one thing in particular, logistics. They know how to make things appear on time. It's part of what they do. So there's a lot of steps between now and when any of us may see a vaccine. So I think that we're going to be into March or April at the earliest before we're seeing widespread vaccine use in Canada, but it could be much later.
As discussions continue about how we can limit the spread of the novel coronavirus, comes word that some are upset at what they are seeing as politicians canceling Christmas. Come on, Brian. No one can cancel Christmas.
Oh, no, you can't cancel Christmas. Christmas, was it the Grinch? Like Christmas comes whether you want it to or not. It's coming. And you can go through and you can steal every toy, you can steal every decoration, but all the who's in Whoville will show up and celebrate Christmas anyway. So, look, politicians can't cancel it. There have been a couple of comments. I know Ontario Premier Doug Ford was asked about people having large gatherings at Christmas, and he warned against it and said, look, please don't, and there's going to be more Christmases down the road. A lot of people got offended at that. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said Christmas won't be quite the same this year. A lot of people getting offended at that. Look, as a practicing Christian, as a bad Catholic, Christmas is not about parties. It is not even the holiest day of the year. That would be Easter. Ask any Christian. Christmas is very special, but without the resurrection, the birth of Jesus doesn't mean a whole lot. So we made it through Easter in the middle of a lockdown. We can make it through Christmas when we're not in a lockdown. But if you need to have 50 people in your house to have Christmas, you're probably not celebrating it right.
While Prime Minister Trudeau is not trying to cancel Christmas, Brian, many are asking if he's trying to fundamentally change Canada and use the pandemic maybe as an excuse. Is Trudeau joining other world leaders on this great reset initiative or the new world economic order? Many are concerned about that.
Well, strangely enough, he is, which is bizarre, because, as you and I talked about several weeks ago, remember, all through the summer, Liberals were bending reporters' ears everywhere. Oh, we're going to use this pandemic to remake Canada. We're going to use this for fundamentally changing the country. And then they realized that was not doing well in focus group tests. Average Canadians were looking at this and saying, what are you talking about? So by the time the throne speech came on September 23rd, they backed away from that and said, oh no, we're just focused on the pandemic. We're just focused on our number one job, which is what Canadians want every government focused on. 6 days after the throne speech, September 29th, the Prime Minister speaking to a meeting of the United Nations, side meeting, and he starts talking about how this pandemic is a chance for a reset, that we can use Agenda 2030, which used to be called, back when I was discussing it in Sun News days, as Agenda 21. Now, this all sounds like something that Dr. Evil would discuss with Austin Powers in a bad B movie. It's real. These are real things. The Great Reset is something that the World Economic Forum has discussed. They've got a book out. They've got a series of talks. They've got a podcast, a series of discussions to figure out how to change the world economy using the pandemic. Agenda 2030 is all about using the environment to implement socialism. And the Prime Minister's talking about both of them in the same breath. So yes, a lot of people worried. Look, there are conspiracy theories out there. I'll warn you to be careful looking these things up on the internet and going down rabbit holes. That doesn't mean that they're not real and that we shouldn't be concerned about world leaders, including our own Prime Minister, trying to say they want to use a pandemic that has claimed more than 10,000 lives as a way to reshape our economy. That's not what I expect of the Prime Minister. That's not what any Canadian should expect of the Prime Minister in the middle of a pandemic.
Business owners have been receiving some much-needed help from Ottawa during the pandemic, Brian. Now, you've been following the wage and rent subsidy bill as it makes its way through Parliament, and you say the Liberals made a mess of this due to the We Charity scandal?
Unfortunately, yes, We Charity does tie into this. Look, the wage subsidy, if you remember back in the spring, they originally said, we'll make it 10%. And the Conservatives and the NDP, you got the left and the right both saying, no, you got to make it 75 or people will be unemployed. And the Liberals said, no, we'll make it 10%. Eventually, they realized the error of their ways. They made it 75. The new wage subsidy bill makes it up to 65%, but under certain conditions. A lot of businesses are saying this is not helpful. On the wage subsidy side, back in the spring, they made it so that landlords had to apply, not a business. A landlord had to apply, and a lot of them just said, we're not going to. You can't pay your rent, you can't pay your rent. Well, that left businesses in the lurch. It took months for the federal government to realize that this was a problem. They brought in a new rent subsidy bill on November 2nd. Now remember, they knew about this in the summer. They prorogued the House they prorogued Parliament on August 18th because of the WE scandal. On November 2nd, they bring in the bill. They didn't send it to the Finance Committee where opposition MPs could move a motion to amend the bill. They sent it to what's called the Committee of the Whole. That means they're meeting in the whole of Parliament. The opposition can't amend the bill in the same way. I'm sorry to get too far into the weeds. But the reason they sent it to the Committee of the Whole is because the Liberals were filibustering the Finance Committee over releasing WE documents. They missed a major error in their bill, and that is that a business that is shut down due to the pandemic, due to public health measures, has to pay their rent in full before they can get money from the government. Wow. Can you imagine telling average Canadians, you got to pay your rent in full before you can get the CERB? If you don't show us you paid your rent, Hal, you're not getting a penny of CERB. That would have been denounced. Well, they realized their error too late. They had to pass the bill as it was, send it to the Senate, and hope that the Senate will fix it and send it back to the House of Commons. That's delaying it by a couple of weeks. It's been a disaster beginning to end.
COVID-19 has really changed the way many of us work, including making video conference calls like we do at Bridge City News every day through Zoom. It's like a standard part of our lives now. Now, it's also led to some embarrassing moments for some people who've been using video conferencing, and that includes a Liberal cabinet minister caught talking about her income, and she got the number wrong?
Yeah, she doesn't even know what she makes. Like, okay, let's be honest. Maryam Monsef did not make the worst Zoom mistake of 2020. There's a lot of big candidates for that we probably don't want to talk about on this broadcast. They're not family friendly. But you've got a Liberal MP joining the House of Commons virtually, and they call out, the Speaker stands up and says, they actually called out for Jody Wilson-Raybould, the former Attorney General, who's now an independent. She was the next to speak. The Speaker calls for her, but Maryam Monsef has not turned off her mic, the Minister for International Development, and she's caught slouching in her chair going, like, what do I make? Like $250? Okay, one, you sound silly. You sound like a teenage girl talking about going out on your date this weekend. But also, no, you make $270 plus all your perks, plus your car and driver, plus your rental allowance, plus. It was an embarrassing moment for her and proof that she's not worth the $270,000 that we're paying her. Why don't we just give her the difference between the $250 and the $270 and see if she'll still do the job?
Sometimes I think I should really run as an MP, you know? Before I let you go, we got a couple of minutes left here. Let's talk about a recent tweet from U.S. President Donald Trump where he referenced Elections Canada. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, it's probably not the response Elections Canada was going for. If you've been following the controversy about the U.S. election, you know that a Canadian company is front and center in it. It's a company called Dominion Voting System, and they provide software and machinery to count ballots, including in many of the contentious states, be it Michigan. I believe they're used in Pennsylvania, Arizona, Nevada. And people are saying, oh, this company's software, it allowed folks to manipulate the system and change ballots. Well, that led to people in Canada saying, wait a minute, did we use that in our last Canadian election? Is that why Justin Trudeau is prime minister? Is that they used bad software? So Elections Canada put out a tweet basically saying, we use paper ballots, we count them by hand under scrutineers. And Donald Trump retweeted it and said, I believe something to the effect of, this is how it should be, or this is exactly it. I don't think that's what Elections Canada wanted to happen, but it does show like the integrity of our system. Or even in many of the municipal elections that I've covered, where they do use voting machines, it's a paper ballot, you fill it in by hand, the machine counts it, but it captures the paper ballot there for any recount. The United States has some weird systems that lead to every 4 years, these arguments and fights. I think that maybe they should start looking at Elections Canada and saying, how do you guys do it? Maybe we'll copy you.
You know what I think is interesting as well is the fact that Trump actually follows Elections Canada on Twitter. Who would have thunk it, right?
I don't follow Elections Canada on Twitter.
One of our regular contributors, Toronto Sun columnist Brian Lilly, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you.
Artificial intelligence is a big part of our society. You see the new technology in our phones, hospitals, our vehicles, in so many industries. To talk more about it is Dr. Jeff Zweerink. He's an astrophysicist and a senior research scholar with Reasons to Believe. It's an organization which combines science together with faith, and he joins me via Skype from Los Angeles. Jeff, welcome back to BCN.
It's good to be here. Looking forward to our conversation today.
Now, give me a brief description about the ladder of causation. Now, this helps identify the key steps for an artificial narrow intelligence to move into an artificial general intelligence. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so when I'm thinking artificial intelligence, growing up when I did, this is the HALs, the R2D2s, the things that are sentient, aware of who you are, aware of who they are, and kind of interact in the world. And we've got a lot of AI out there right now, which is this kind of narrow intelligence, which can play a game of chess or figure out what you're saying and ask you or order pizza online for you. And so, but the difference between those are very dramatic because what all of the AI that we have now basically maps this set of inputs to this set of outputs. And so it's a very basically correlative way of looking at things. It's like, I see this, therefore that means this. And so there's this kind of seeing aspect to it. But if you want to get to what humans do, or that artificial general intelligence, you got to move up to the next higher rung, which is not just seeing the correlations, but actually intervening to make something happen. So, say I want to build a pool in my backyard. I can have it look and say, all right, these are the kinds of pools you could put in there. That would be a correlation type thing. But an intervention would be, say, what happens if I remove a wall from the house? Or what if I take the tree out? And then to move to the next letter of causation, the third rung, it's asking, what if I move from Los Angeles to Canada? How would that impact my building a pool? Because the things that happen in Los Angeles are very different from Canada when it comes to building a pool. So that's kind of imagining what could be beyond what is already known.
Jeff, I used to have a pool in Southern Ontario, man. The amount of work I had to put in that thing, cleaning it every day. Don't do it. Don't do it. That's all I'm saying. Now, AI such as Siri, Alexa, and even Tesla cars are almost eerie in how they respond and interact with us. What rung do these fall on, and how much does AI actually anticipate versus respond to our requests?
Well, all of the AI that's out there that I'm aware of is kind of on that first rung of causation, that they're looking at, again, mapping inputs to outputs. So they're seeing this, and therefore that means this. And there's some algorithm for how they choose between different options, but it's seeing this and correlating with that. So all of the AI that we have is at that level. But what you notice is that it's remarkable how it looks like they're doing something more. It looks like they're anticipating, but in reality, what they're doing is saying, okay, given this input, very complicated algorithm and process of mapping it to an output, but nonetheless, it's just this correlation. Input goes to that output.
I want to talk to you a bit about some concerns I know people have with when it comes to autonomous vehicles. What happens if somebody was to hack into the computer of the system and actually kidnap somebody, change their whole course, or maybe cause the brakes to fail? I mean, there's so many things can happen if technology fails or if somebody hacks into the system.
No, that's actually a very good point. I mean, when it comes to AI, it is one of these really powerful tools. It can do great goods. It can spot diseases and bad or spots on x-rays far better than people can. It's got that sort of capacity. But the more powerful the tool, the greater good you can do with it, but also the greater damage you can do with it. And so that really calls us as humans to make sure that as we're developing this, we don't just look at the technological side. We also have to look at the ethical and moral side. How do we deal with this powerful tool so that the damage is not caused, but we're actually using it for good?
Now, what are some of the myths or misconceptions associated with artificial intelligence?
I think one of the things that plays out often in that is that we see artificial intelligence, and you mentioned Alexa and Siri, and how it's like they're anticipating and they're learning, and we hear those words and we think very humanly about those. That when I'm talking with you, I hear you saying something and I think, oh, maybe he's going there. I'm actually thinking, okay, where do I fit into this conversation? What's he trying to do? I'm thinking about it a particular way. Whereas Alexa, Siri, all of the AIs that are out there right now, again, they're just saying, all right, these inputs mean these outputs. They're not trying to consider, what are you doing? Where are you going with this? How can I help? It's really just trying to do what it's programmed to do in that sense. And in that sense, while it is learning, it's not like it's saying, we've been talking this way. Maybe it would be better if we talk this way. That would help us get there better. All it's doing is saying, well, I tried this and this was said, no, it didn't work well. So this worked better. So I'm going to go that way. So it learns in that sense, but it doesn't have that higher level cognition or thinking and saying, hey, what's going on? How do I help accomplish this goal better? Because all it is designed is to do is what it's the goal that it's been programmed to deal with.
Now, we've heard that artificial intelligence can learn, but can it think outside of what it's been programmed in to do? Like, can it look ahead and imagine, or maybe backwards to reflect on what might have been? Jeff, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's a little bit of a subtle question, because often, I'll give a little bit more concrete example. I can talk about learning where a ball goes. And so I could say, I know that if it's going with this speed at this angle, I know it's going to land there. And then I could say, I don't know what happens if it's a different speed and a different angle. But as I grow, I recognize, wait a second, there's a formula I can just plug this into. And so now that I know the formula, I can deal with a whole wide range of situations. But even though I'm being able to quote unquote learn what's going on in this situation, it's still the same thing. So that's what the AI is doing. It's taking what is in this general programming and saying, okay, I can work in that realm, which is very different again than what humans do. Because again, so when I go and play chess, I'm looking to win, but I could go halfway through the game. I could say, you know what? This game has been fun trying to win, but now I'm going to see how long can I play the game. There's nothing that an AI will do at this point where I'll go in there and say, you know what, this goal isn't very good. I'm just going to go a different way. Nothing about AI does that at this point.
If you want to play a long game, maybe try Monopoly or even Risk. That's also pretty long too. Now, with the third rung requiring the ability to imagine something that does not already exist, is there still a possibility that artificial intelligence technology can really advance to that point?
Well, there are people who are developing the mathematics that allows an algorithm or an artificial intelligence to do some of those, not just see, but actually intervene and gather new data to see what might go on, and also to even imagine new scenarios. But the best I understand it at this point is there are aspects that it's going to mimic of human behavior, but it still is not doing it in the way a human does. Because again, what allows the computer to do that, or the AI to do that, is there's just this incredible wealth of data that it can process through and figure out. So it may be able to imagine or get to the place where it says, okay, let's look at an entirely new situation that doesn't exist. Say maybe if I didn't move to California, where would I be today type thing. But it's not going to be able to do that nearly as universally or as generally as humans do, because there's also a relational aspect of the way humans behave. And putting that into a computer, I think that's one of the things that really distinguishes us from a computer. You think of what Spock does, the ultimate logical machine. But ultimately, what we like about Spock is that he behaves rather humanly. He actually engages in a relationship.
Now, even with the vast advances in AI, how does its limitations reveal the uniqueness of humanity?
Well, I think as we begin to think about what is an AGI and how do we get to a general intelligence, what that forces us to do is ask, what is it about humanity that's unique and distinct, and what do we need to do to make a computer do that? It used to be that if we could the thought was if we could make a computer that could beat humans at chess, that would be a general intelligence, or maybe at poker, or maybe at this. And what we found is that every time we've achieved those goals, we say, all right, we can actually build computers that are far better than humans at chess or any well-defined game, quite honestly, but they still just approach it very differently. We approach it from a thought process, but we also ask, how do we play into this? So when the computer wins the game of chess, it never says, yeah, that was a great game of chess. It doesn't say anything. It just won the game of chess. Whereas I would be very excited if I could beat a grandmaster playing chess, or my team won the Super Bowl. The AI just doesn't think that way. So there is this distinction in how humans are. We're aware of where we stand in the situation, not just accomplishing tasks like an AI would do.
Yeah, you're right. It'll just say game over. Thanks for playing. Now, what might that uniqueness say about us, where or who we come from, and our purpose in this universe?
Well, I think the fact that an AI doesn't think that way, that we do think that way, leads to the idea that perhaps this is not all there is. If we can imagine worlds outside of our universe, maybe there is a world outside our universe. If our ability to perform tasks is important, but we also are driven to relate to people, maybe we're designed to be relational. And I find that fits very comfortably within Christian theistic thought, that God in and of his being is relational. He's created us in his image. Therefore, we are relational. We're emotional beings. We're social beings. We're also engineer type beings. And so we've got this great wealth of who we are, or the attributes that we share that ultimately flow from being made in God's image. The point is to something that's far bigger than what we are. And I think as we get closer to creating an AI, we see that AI will not match us, that it's made in our image. We see that we're also made in somebody else's image.
Elon Musk, Steve Wozniak, and Bill Gates have expressed concerns in the past about the risk posed by artificial intelligence, perhaps that we may rely on it a little bit too much. What are your thoughts?
I think that's a definite possibility. We seem to, as a people, be driven towards increasing comfort and avoiding hardships and working less. And that tends to lead to giving away things that protect our freedoms and our liberty and our capacity to take care of ourselves and manage new situations. And so the more we become dependent on it, I really do think that's problematic, especially if we're designed to work and be social and conquer and go out and explore this world, which I think, again, that flows out of a Christian worldview.
How about AI potentially taking away people's jobs as well? There's always that concern too.
I think that's somewhat inevitable, and there's a good part and a bad part of that, because there are certain jobs that are dangerous and humans get hurt, and so if we can have AIs do that, but just becomes a lot easier. Or you know, if your screwdriver breaks, you may be sad, but you go to the store and buy a new screwdriver. If you break an arm and you can't work, that's a bigger deal. So there are aspects of what an AI can do that will help humanity. Again, we have to be careful that we don't kind of have that Wall-E type approach where we want the AI to do everything so that we can just sit back, play our games, watch TV, and enjoy sodas on the couch. That's not healthy for us.
So how do we ensure the goal of keeping AI's impact on society very beneficial?
I think it's incredibly important that as we're developing the technology, we also need to be equally serious about thinking about the ethical, theological, and philosophical ramifications. And I know there are people who've thought about that, and there are people involved in that conversation, but we seem to be kind of driven by what can we do at this point. And I just want to make sure that we're very intentional about making sure we're thinking about, is this a good idea? Do we really want to do this? What does it say about our place? And might we be doing something that ultimately is detrimental to humanity in the way we're developing AI? I think if we can do that, we can use the power that AI will bring by avoiding the consequences that would come by using it improperly.
Dr. Jeff Zwerig, Senior Research Scholar with Reasons to Believe, thanks for joining me today from Los Angeles.
Enjoyed our conversation. Thanks for having me.
On behalf of all of us here at BCN, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless, and thanks so much for watching.